G'day, this is Andrew Price here from blenderguru.com, and in this video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to create this rainy window image that you can see right here. So this sort of image can be used for, really it's for fun. I just thought I'd try and do something a little bit different in this tutorial. I don't know what you could use it for, like a title animation or something like that, or I don't know, just have some fun with it, make something cool looking. This is, if I can get back to it, I'll show you what the finished scene looks like in Blender. This is it. Ta-da! Now I should say this isn't an animation, this is a still image. All of these are completely still. Whoa, it's a weird sort of angle there. Anyway, basically the way this is created is basically a plane with a whole bunch of particles on it, and then each one of those particles are, if I can get out, whoop, one of these things. So that is roughly, excuse the weird angle that I'm looking at it from now, but anyway, that is the rough of it. That's sort of how it's all pieced together. So yeah, we're going to be learning just basically how to make this image. Going to be doing a bunch of texturing, lighting, depth of field, all that good stuff. And today's a perfect day because today here in South Korea it is very foggy, extremely foggy. It just happens. Just some days it's all sunny and then just suddenly it's all foggy and then it's back to normal again. It's very weird like that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the tutorial. I'm going to turn on the screen keys tool. Okay, cool. Let's get started. So let's delete the default cube and the lamp, and I'm going to replace that with a plane. And of course the plane is going to be rotated by 90 degrees, and then I'm going to position the camera dead onto that plane, just like this. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to put the droplets onto this plane here, and we're going to be using particles, as I said before, but the first thing you need to do, excuse me, is to actually model those droplets, of course. So let's jump to a new layer, and for each droplet, we're going to start with a UV sphere, like this, and I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to rotate that by 90 degrees. So just like that, and then I'm going to grab just this one point right there at the end of the sphere. I'm going to push O to turn on proportional editing, and then I'm going to push this back to be about here. Now the reason that I'm doing this is because I want the droplet to obviously not go through the glass in any way, so I want it to sort of be resting on the glass. And I want there to be a little bit of like surface tension, so there's a little bit of an edge to it like that. And I'm also going to scale it down along the x-axis just like that, because you don't want it to bulge out too far or else it will look a little bit too unrealistic. Okay, so this is one droplet, one little basic droplet, and if we were to just place that all over that plane there, it would look fairly unrealistic. So we're going to create a duplicate of this, and we're going to be doing some different things to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the view, and I'm going to load in a image reference, which, if I can remember where I saved it, reference CC. Oh, hello, someone's texting me. Let's go load in this one, I think. Okay, cool. So this is just a Creative Commons image that I pulled off of Flickr. Anyway, so I'm just going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to focus on one of these droplets. And really, if you have a look at this, you can see that droplets can pretty much appear in any sort of shape, but it does always help to at least just try to go off a reference image. So I'm just going to try and make this one right here. So this is fairly easy. You don't have to spend too long on this because, as I said, we're going to be making quite a few of these, little different types of them. So it doesn't really matter if you, if it doesn't look all that perfect. So something like that is fine. So I'm going to duplicate that one. This one is sort of, this guy right here, that one's becoming my main sort of, sorry, not the main, like the template. Yeah, the one to go off. Okay. Let's do this guy right here. Sort of weird looking thing. Let's sort of push this guy in to be like that. Let's move this across. Let's pull this out, something like that. And you probably sort of, you know, at this stage, you might be questioning, like, how are these little blobs supposed to create anything that looks remotely cool? But really, you'll start to notice it. Did we already make that? Did I happen to focus on the exact same one as before? I think I did. Anyway, doesn't really matter all that much. Yeah, let's just turn into this one. Yeah, you won't really notice, or you won't really, I guess, get to see how all of your efforts and stuff, how it all sort of works until you can see it when we turn them into particles, and it all sort of displaces and goes everywhere. And so yeah, so after we've made these droplets, these ones that are sort of like still droplets, we're going to be making the droplets which look as though they're running down the actual glass face themselves. So that's what we're going to be doing after this step. But yeah, you can see they're all just sort of weird little amoeba. Amoeba? Is that what you would call it? You know, little alien type shaped things. Yeah, it's kind of weird. What can I look at? What's a good one to go off? Oh yeah, this one will do. Yeah. Pretty good. What can I talk about? It's pretty boring when I'm just doing this. I'll tell you what. I take the bus to get to work every day. You might think that's weird that I work for myself. Why am I taking the bus? Well, the thing is, I don't actually work from home. I've rented out an office which I've chosen to work in for the sheer point of if you work from home, it gets a little bit depressing after a while because you never know when you've stopped work. You always feel like you should be working. So I've basically rented out a separate apartment from my main apartment here in Korea, which I've set up my office in, and that's just for the sole purpose of knowing when I finish work. But anyway, I catch the bus to get to work every day, and I don't know how it is in other countries, but at least in Australia, I don't think it's like this. But here in Korea, it's very, how could you describe it? Very rushed in the point of getting on and off the bus, whereby the bus driver really won't wait for you to properly disembark the bus. I've seen people like get closed in the door, like as the door is shutting, like they'll just get closed in there because of he's just pulling away as they're trying to get out of the bus. And the funny thing is that they also don't wait for you to take a seat. And that doesn't matter if you're, a young, fit person like myself, or you're an old lady. As soon as you jump on that bus, the door shuts, you have to find a seat as quickly as you can because he is going to floor it out of there. And I swear it's like a game that they play with each other, like the bus drivers, to see who can knock over the most amount of passengers in a day. It's quite a sight to behold. It's like musical chairs. Basically, you jump on the bus, and then it's like the music stops, go, and you have to find a chair as quickly as you can, or else you are losing it because he's going to floor that bus out of there, and you are just going to go flying into the nearest pole or passenger or whatever else. Anyway, okay, I think we've created enough little droplets there, and I've talked about enough random stuff. So what I should have done, actually, can I select all of them and then push smooth? I can. Cool. Awesome. I thought I would have to do it one by one. Okay, so smoothing all of those one by at the same time. Now we need to give it a material, of course. So let's just select one of these, and I think we can actually remove that now. That's good. So this material, let's call this raindrops, and the shader, I'm gonna make it glass. That's all we need to do for that. Pretty easy. And actually, turn the value of that all the way up to, all the way up to 1. Why is Blender doing that? Maybe somebody can tell me. But recently, in the latest builds, it stalls when you change a value. Like it doesn't, it like for about 2 seconds, it doesn't do anything. Anyway, turn that up to be pure white, like I've just done, and then select all of them. Then hit Control L, and then select materials. And now they all have that same material that we've just applied there. Okay, cool. Now the next thing we need to do is select all of them and hit Control G. And what that will do is create a group. And if you push T, you can then change the name of the group. So let's call this group raindrops. All right, let's go back to layer 1 with our plane sitting right here. Yeah, let's go ahead and save it whilst we're at it. Save that. Okay, so we're going to make those rain droplets appear on our plane here. So to do that, go to the particles panel, add a new particle system, change that emitter type to be hair. And you can see you've now got needles that are spraying towards the camera, which is weird. Go ahead and check on advanced, because I've never been able to use this without using advanced. I don't know. I know you got to simplify things for some users, but I find advanced is like necessary. You always need it. Anyway, then go down to rendering and then click on group and then select raindrops. And you can see, look at that. We have like a wall of bricks, it looks like. And that's because it's sort of rotated on the wrong axis. So go ahead, click on rotation, and it'll rotate it on the correct axes. And then we also want to change the size of it. So let's change, I think if you turn down this size, we're not actually going to get it to the correct sort of size we want. So we're going to have to change this velocity size as well. It's sort of weird. Like you've got two values that are changing the size, like this one and that one. So it's sort of, I don't know. Let's set this one to 0.1 just so we know what we're going off. And then let's just change this size here to be something like that. And I'm going to turn the randomized size up to be 0.8, like that. Okay, that's not bad. And also, let's go rotation. Let's set this to normal. And then, oh, look at that. It does actually work. Okay. And then we can just change that random there, that random size to be something, and then it's going to rotate them. Now, that might be a problem when we have the little trails of drops that we're going to make next. But anyway, it looks cool now. Yeah. Anyway, okay, cool. Let's go back. Okay, so we've created these little droplets here. Now, let's duplicate that one right there. Now we're going to create that that look, which, oh, it's already gone. Okay, I can't show you the image. But the look of a droplet which is trailing down the window, like an actual, droplet that's going down the window. So, how to create that? We're going to start with this guy right here, and I'm going to push C, and I'm going to select these vertices right here, okay, and I'm going to push extrude, and I'm going to extrude it all the way up to be the height that we want our trail to be, so, roughly something like that. And then at this stage also, because you want, oh, look at that. You can see it's also sort of off target. So make sure that you've got it so that it is on that green line there, because that, if it goes beyond that, then you've got part of the trail which will go through the glass when it's in the particle system. So just make a note of that. And then also what I'm going to do, I'm going to position the cursor to be just on that position right there. And then I'm going to select that point. And I'm going to change the pivot point to be 3D cursor, and then I'm going to scale that inwards like that. You can see that the effect that it's having there. And then I'm going to scale it along the y-axis there as well. And the z-axis. I should have just pushed S. I could have saved all that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so yeah, like that, pretty much. That's how we do it. Then I'm going to hit Control R. And I'm using the mouse wheel to create a whole bunch of loop cuts. And basically, however many you want is however much detail you're going to get. So roughly something like that should be fine. And all we need to do at this point is to create what looks roughly like a trail of rain droplets. You know what I mean. I haven't actually got a reference image ready. I'm going to pause the recording and get a reference image so we can check that. Hang on. Haha, I'm back. Okay, I've got a reference image. Let me split this. Let's go open. And I found it. This guy right here. Aha, there we go. Okay, cool. So we are essentially modeling this sort of trail, this sort of look that you can see right there. So, essentially turning on proportional editing with O. And if you just... Ooh, change this to bounding box. We just rotate this, sort of push that around Maybe move that sort of like that. Essentially, this just comes down to, again, the amount of effort that you put into, you know, following a reference image always pays off in the end. So I have to rush when I do my tutorials, or, you know, I tend to do it a lot faster than what I would do if I'm working by myself without people watching. But you might want to spend a little bit longer sort of following, you know, how things look. The other thing you can do is sort of grab portions. You know, you don't have to just rotate edge loops like I'm doing right here. You can grab just little portions like this, push that in there, because you can see parts of this are uneven, like it's sort of like jaggedy everywhere. So you want to sort of emulate that sort of look. So parts that are thicker than others, maybe that's a little bit weird. So something like this. Actually, you know, I was thinking when I was looking at the reference images before of like rainy stuff. Whenever it's a rainy day, and there's never been like a warning, like during the morning when people are leaving the house, like there's no clouds, it's like a sunny day, and then suddenly it's just pouring, and then everybody's caught out in the city without an umbrella, you know, and so everybody goes for that mad dash for whoever's selling an umbrella. They have to buy one from them, of course, you know, and so you get these people just dishing out cash for the umbrellas. And I always find it funny in Korea. There's, you know, all these street vendors and stuff that have the umbrellas there, and every time it's raining, like I go up to them and I'm like, yeah, how much for an umbrella? And they're like, 3,001, which is like $3 or like $2 or something. And I'm always like, really? Is that all you're gonna charge me? Like if it was me and I happened to be an umbrella vendor and it was a rainy day, I'd be like, score, big time. I am jacking up the prices, you know, supply and demand. Like I would gladly pay $10 for an umbrella, because that's all, you're the one that's got the umbrellas, you know. And yet, you know, $3. Okay. All right. If that's all you're going to charge me, I appreciate it. Thank you. But you could be doing a lot better for yourself. Let's just say that. But I don't know. Maybe that's why Korea's a sort of nice place when it comes to buying things. I don't know. But then other things are really expensive, so I don't know what I'm really talking about anymore. All right. I'm hoping you can sort of get what I'm doing without me having to describe it and give commentary for everything. Giving a squiggly line like that is what we're doing essentially. Ta-da! Pretty cool. What I might also do is just give this raindrop here a little bit more of a rounded appearance, just so that it looks a little bit cooler. So something like that is pretty cool. My phone keeps vibrating because my wife is texting me. It's annoying. Anyway, okay. So that's cool. It looks all right at the moment. We can make it look even better if, because if you zoom in here, you can see on this rain droplet, you've got like what looks like a frayed edge, like it's sort of like jaggedy. So we can sort of fake that. You can sort of see it a little bit better here. We can fake that using a displacement modifier. So if I go here with our modifier stacker and go displace and then click on new, you can see, ta-da, you've got a frayed everything. It all looks spiky and horrible. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to use what you can see here, vertex group, which will allow us to paint different parts of the mesh to receive the frayed part so that it's not spiky everywhere. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So if you hit Control Tab, you can see that it's blue at the moment, which means that there is no vertex group. So let's go to the, what do you call that? What panel is that called? There's no tool. It's the object data. Go to the object data panel, then go vertex groups, click on the plus button, and then go tab mode, select everything. Then with a weight of 1, go ahead and click on assign. Now if you go Control Tab, you can see it's red because it's now completely assigned as it's now part of that vertex group. So now I'm going to push T, which is going to bring up the toolbar. This is in weight paint mode, just as a reminder. Why did it jump out of that? Okay, weight paint mode. I'm going to set the weight of this to be 0. See what I mean? Like there's a delay when I push the button. I don't know. there's a bug in Blender at the moment. Anyway, and I'm just going to paint whichever parts of this I don't want that frayed part, that sort of squiggly thing to appear. So I actually even don't want it to be down the middle. I only want it to be on the edge. So I can even paint just this middle part as well if I wanted to. Let's turn it off just so we can sort of see what's happening. So if I sort of paint down here, it's looking very snake-like, isn't it? Yeah, that's cool. Let's go down there. All right. Speaking of snakes, got another story for you. I went to Australia recently. Hey, my home country. Imagine that, going to Australia, where I live, for Christmas. And I was walking with my wife at nighttime down my home street, just going for a walk at nighttime. Had the dog with us and everything, just chilling out, just talking, just going for a walk. And we got to the end of the street, did a U-turn to come back around to the house, and saw something ahead sliding across the road. It's the biggest snake I'd ever seen in my life. It was, I think it must have been like a 2 or 3 meter python. Thick, massive python. Just cruising across the road, just slowly slithering along. And I don't know, it's a completely different vibe to when you, I mean, I've been to zoos before, I've been to reptile parks and, you know, things like that. And I've seen snakes roughly that size behind glass. When you see it in the wild, it's a completely different experience. It's you suddenly feel very vulnerable, very scared. And you sort of like wonder like, what's this thing's speed range? You know, how fast can it accelerate? Will it accelerate at me? Will it attack me? You know, and so it's a very interesting experience. I mean, I basically just kept my distance and we just watched it, and it just slowly gliding across the road until it got to the other edge, and then we crossed. Basically, we just had to wait for the snake to cross the road. But it was yeah, it was a very interesting experience. And it was cool because my wife was there, and she's obviously Korean, and so it was a nice experience for her to see a real snake in the real world. Anyway, cool. So we've now done the weight painting. I've applied the vertex group as group. We also want to change the direction to be Y, or is it Y? Hang on. Let's first of all apply the rotation, so that it's correct. Let's go, is it X or is it Y? Yes, it's, gosh, I can't even tell. Yes, it's Y. Okay, so we only want it to go left to right, basically. And then we want to turn down that strength to be something like that. And actually, if you wanted to, you could even give a subsurf modifier. Push it, ooh, look at that. That looks even better. And then if let's turn up that cloud, and that looks pretty good, actually. That looks a little bit better. Not bad at all. Okay, I didn't do the subsurf modifier with mine, but like for my final image, but I think this actually looks better, so that's kind of cool. All right, we're getting on 23 minutes. That's not bad. Doing okay for this tutorial. So I'm just, again, going to do what I just did before with all the other droplets. Just going to create a few little random variations to it so that we don't have them all looking identical to each other. Just moving different points around like this. Let's drag this one across here. Something like that. Sort of looks like electricity, like lightning bolts. Something like that. Yeah, that's alright. Alright, cool. Getting there. Alright. Yeah. And I'll just create a little part like that so it looks different. Okay, cool. So now we've got 3 of these. Whoa, what happened there? We've got 3 of these long ones, and then we've got a whole bunch of these droplets. Now, they should all be part of the same group, which you can check if you go to the object panel. And then you've got it here under rain groups, which is cool. So I'm going to move that across to get rid of that reference image now. Let's go back. Woohoo! There we go. Check it out. That's our plane. So, yeah. You could see that I turned on that rotation before, that random rotation. And as I predicted, it didn't work very well with the long squiggly ones. So actually, I didn't do this for mine, but I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to move this to a separate group so that we can have the rotation of these droplets whilst having these ones separate to that so that they're not doing that thing. Do I want to do that? Yeah, well, whatever, we'll do it. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so let's delete this, and delete this, and I'll call these Control G, and let's call it long drops, which is also Aussie slang for a toilet. I'm not even kidding. The long drop. Fun fact. Okay, so I'm just creating another particle system. I've just duplicated, basically taken the exact same settings we've got from the last one. I'm going to push 2 next to that, and then go down here to groups, and then just change this to the long drops. And then the only thing I'm going to change here is change the random. Let's change that to be 0. And then also we can set the amount of them, because currently there's 1,000. So let's change that to be, let's go 300. Is that too many? I think that might be too many. How many of these ones have we got? Yeah, we got, let's change that to be 500. And actually, I'm going to turn down the display because you can see that my Blender view at the moment is lagging quite a bit. So I'm going to go 50% view on that one. Actually, no, let's go 10% view because it's still laggy. Yeah, something like that. And then I think for these long drops, I think I've got too many of those as well. So let's go with 100. And I'll also, oh, we've got random size as well, so that's cool. Okay, cool. All right, so now we can actually start positioning the camera. So I'm going to move the camera in quite close here to be about there. Looks pretty good. Something like that. Okay, now the point, or one thing that we want composition-wise is we want there in, if you have a look at the camera view now, if you go to the, with the camera selected, go to composition guides and then select thirds. This will allow us to see the rule of thirds. If you don't know what rule of thirds are, go ahead, Google it right now, and you will learn all about it. But basically, I want there to be a nice raindrop on this top left-hand corner right there. So you can see we've got one there, so that's good. That's fine. That's pretty much all I wanted. So now that we've got that there, that's actually works out quite well. Okay, so that's fine. That's all well and good. So I think I need to make sure that everything here has the same material. That's good. Okay, that material is good. All right, now we're going to get into the lighting and everything else. So for our plane here, you can see there's actually no material for that yet. So I'm going to give it a new material, and the material is glass, just like we did for the others. And I'm going to change this to node editor, and then click on material, because we're going to be doing a little bit of some fancy stuff with the glass. Actually, before that as well, we should actually add light to the scene, because currently we won't be able to see anything if there's no light. So for the light, it's actually quite simple. I'm just going to add in a circle, and then make sure that you've got the fill type to N-gon or triangle, whatever, so there's actually a face there. And then I'm going to position that so that it is above the plane, roughly about there. Move that out, drag that to be roughly that size. That's pretty good. And then I'm going to change the emission. Sorry, I'm going to change the type to emission. So this is our mesh light. And then I'm going to give it a color, which is light blue. And let's go 30 strength. And again, you can sort of play this by ear. Like, I'm using exact measurements here. You might be wondering, how do I know it's 30? Well, I know because I've done the scene before. But, you know, if you're doing it by yourself and it was a new scene, you sort of play with the scene and see what looks best. I'm cheating because I know how the end result looks. That's basically all it is. Okay, I'm changing the background color to be not completely black. It's a nice little trick there for you. Never go all the way black. Just go a little bit there. Yeah. Now for the glass itself, we've got the plane here. So let's take a look at it with the rendered view mode. Viewport shader, you can see it looks pretty terrible at the moment. By the way, also as a little trick, if you go to the rendered viewport here, if you click on border, it'll actually only show you inside the camera viewport there, which is really good because you can see currently it's actually rendering what's outside of the camera as well. So it's going to slow down your rendering preview. But if you check border, it's going to render it a lot faster. So that's a little trick there for you. Now you can see that there's not actually much there. Like it's the light isn't really hitting the glass that well. But if you turn up the roughness, you can see that the light is actually affecting the glass there. So if you turn up the roughness, it sort of makes the glass look like it's got this misty sort of effect to it. So that's what we want. So we're going to be using a few textures to apply over the top of this glass to give it that sort of look. To keep the misty look, but also have it look as though droplets have sort of cut away at some of that misty type of look. So I'm going to be using an image texture that I made myself called Rainy Texture, which I just made in Photoshop using a couple of brushes, just dragging down. It's quite simple. So if I just drag this and connect this into the roughness value, you can see that nothing has actually happened. We have to UV unwrap the plane. So with the plane selected, go into edit mode, hit U, and then select unwrap. Ta-da! And there we go. So this is, that's the effect that it's have. Now the reason it looks quite terrible at the moment is that this is a purely black and white texture. So it is using black, meaning like 0 roughness, for wherever there is that rainy part, which is good, which is what we want. However, it's because the other value is white, it's now using 100% roughness for everything else. So what we want to do is we want to combine it with another image texture. And the texture that I'm going to use is one that I pulled off cgtextures.com. It is splatter colored 0003_H. It's always fun reading out numbers. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to combine those two together by adding in a mix RGB node. It used to be called just a mix node. Now it's a mix RGB node. I'm not exactly sure why they changed that. And I want this one, this new one, this splatter texture to be in the top input. And then I'm going to set this to be multiply. Now you can see the effect that it's having. So it's sort of applying that over the top of the other one. So it's looking a little bit better now. And I'm going to change this factor to be 1 as well, so that we get that solid streaky effect going through, which is cool. And also, now because this one is now acting as, like this texture here is acting as how much of the rough, like the minimum and maximum value of the roughness, if that makes sense. It'll make sense in a moment. Okay, add in a color ramp node and then drop this in right there. Now what this will do is this white value here will now become the maximum value of roughness. So it'll be essentially like turning down this factor value. So with the white value selected, I'm going to turn that down to be about, I don't know, like that. And then I'm also going to turn this black down just so that we get some more of the like the texture showing through, so it's a little bit more contrasty than it was before. I'm going to split this view. And I'm going to grab the light at the top and I'm going to pull it out so that we can see the scene a little bit better. So you can see the scene is starting to come together very, very slowly. In fact, I'm going to give it a render now just so that we can see how it's going to look. Let's go 500 samples and the tile size, I'm going to go 256 because that's usually the best. Let's give that a render now, see how that looks. Excuse me, just getting a drink. All right. It's pretty good. It's not bad. I think these other droplets here, the ones that were, the reason there's a lot more droplets here than there are up there is because our particle system for our, our smaller droplets, we set the display for that to be 50% or 10% or something like that. So the render actually has a lot more droplets than what you would see. So let's see if we set that back, set that up to 100%. Yeah, that's fine. We can keep it like that. There you go. You can see how it's sort of all pulling together now. And it doesn't look too bad, I would say. I think you can kind of see like the edge of this light at the top there. So I might play around with that a little bit. Yeah, that looks a little bit weird. So pull that in a little bit, perhaps. Not exactly sure how I did it before. Anyway, it's not too bad, I guess. Pull that out roughly there. Drag that out a little bit. Yeah, that's not too bad. I don't know. I'm sort of messing around now. If I wanted to, actually what you could do is with the material here selected, if you turn down the multiply, then you would get a little bit of a fuzzy effect on the, yeah, this part here, like where the streaks are going through, because you've got that set to 1, which is now giving it a crisp, you know, 100% reflection. But if you turn that down, you get a little bit of a fuzzy effect. So you won't have that ring appearing of the light. So that's a little, yeah, little tip there for you. Okay, let's do that. All right. Okay, whew. All right, getting on to 35 minutes. All right, not bad. I've done longer tutorials before that have looked worse, so that's not bad. Okay, so now we're gonna get into some fun stuff. So in the background here, we want there to be some lights. So like some, what looks like car lights or like street lighting, urban sort of setting, that kind of thing. And the way we're gonna do that is actually by placing in the background physical light sources, like mesh lights. So way off into the backdrop over here, I'm going to add in a UV sphere, and I'm going to give it a material of emission, and let's set that to be 20, and let's give it a color of orange like that. Now, although if you're looking through the 3D viewport, you can see the sphere is right there, but if you look through the render view, it's not actually there. Now, the reason for that is that the glass itself has an IOR, index of refraction value, of 1.45, which means that it's bending the reflection, which means that what you see here won't reflect over there necessarily. So it's slightly off camera. So what you need to do is move it like that, and then you'll see it in that point. So you actually need to, it's kind of weird. You have to sort of move things in a way that, like, you can't position things exactly where you want. I don't know, it becomes more annoying later on, trust me. Okay. So essentially what I'm trying to do now is just to create a random assortment of different colors, which will create the look of sort of an urban street type scene. So I've got an orange light there. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to give it a new material, and then I'm going to give this a yellow color, but more white. You don't want to go too saturated, or it can look kind of fake or kind of bad. Turn down the strength of that as well. I might duplicate that one. And I might also, let's duplicate that white light, that yellow light. Let's maybe push one over here. Now the reason we're using sort of yellows and oranges is because we've got a blue color over here, which is a cooler hue. And then on the right side, we want to contrast that with some warmer colors. So that's why we're sort of keeping it to that sort of arrangement. So let's give it a new material. Let's go for a reddish color. So something like that. That's actually not bad. And then let's grab one of these orange ones and let's push that there. Might just turn down the size of it as well. I think for mine I used like, I don't know, like 50 of these little spheres. So I used like a range of them, like all different sizes. Some of them really far away from the camera, some of them a little bit closer, which can sort of give you a different sort of look. So I'll sort of play with this a little bit. Let's move that up. Yeah, so it's sort of something like that. And then you can also just grab them all and like duplicate them. Maybe rotate them around a little bit. Push them up. I don't know, you can have a bit of fun with it. Sort of play around with how they're going to look. Again, this is one of those ones where I can't spend an hour on this part of the tutorial because it's going to be really boring for you all. But you do want to spend a little bit of time getting the arrangement right of, you know, getting some nice sort of colors mixed together. Maybe you want to create the look of like some tail lights, so maybe double up on some red. So let's see for this red one. Where's this red one? Got red ones there. So if we just create two red lights next to each other, it can kind of look like like 2 tail lights together, if you sort of know what I mean. And then you can get like 2 headlights, so it looks like maybe there's cars over there or something like that. You can have a little bit of fun with it. Yeah, like that. That's pretty much all there is to it. All right. So presumably, or let's just presume that we've got the lights in the background there how we want them. We've got everything else here set up. Now the final fun thing to do is the depth of field, and this is where it all comes cool. I want the focus of our camera to be on this droplet right there. Now there are ways to set the depth of field for the camera. One being, you can just set this distance value right here. So if you set the limits for that camera, wherever that little yellow crosshair is, that will define the focus point. However, it can be hard to sort of get it exactly right. So what I find is best is to actually use an empty, like so, and then place it wherever you want the focal point to be. But that can be kind of hard because you got to sort of line it up with whatever you want in focus. But if you do this, if you look through the camera viewpoint, and then if you click on snap and then change the snapping point to be face, then if I just press G, it will move that empty directly to that face right there. How cool is that? So it's now moved it exactly there on that little raindrop. So now I can turn that off. Let's set that back to increment. I'll scale that down so it's not taking up so much room. And let's call this DOF, short for, of course, depth of field. And I'm going to select the camera, and then let's go DOF. There we go. So now the focal point should be on that droplet right there. Now, we've got to set the amount of focus. So I'm going to use f-stop. Some people wonder why I use f-stop instead of just using radius. It doesn't really matter. I just use f-stop because I use a camera myself, so I'm sort of familiar with the f-stop values. I'm going to use an f-stop value of 1, which is quite a shallow depth of field, so quite heavy. But for this type of image, I think it works quite well. So I'm going to give it, value of 1, and let's go ahead and render it, and we'll see how that looks. Ta-da! And you can see the effect that it has there. It looks a lot nicer now than this ugly, blurry looking image we've got up there. So cool. So it looks pretty good. And you could pretty much call this finished if you wanted to. But there is one final thing I remembered that we can do. And that is to create some smaller, tinier little droplets just attached to this glass here. Because although the misty effect does look quite nice there, it does look a little bit fake as well. So by adding in some tiny little droplets over the surface of the glass, it'll look even more realistic. So rather than reuse the droplets that we've created already, although they are nice, they are a little bit too high res for the amount of droplets that we're going to need all over the surface, because we're going to be using about 50,000 particles for this next step. So really simply what I'm going to do is just right over here, I'm just going to add in a ecosphere. We can set the subdivision for that for 2. And I'm just going to grab these vertices right there. And just like we did before, just position it like that. Pretty good, pretty easy. Okay, and let's go smooth shading, and I might just create a few just because I'm feeling like I want to waste more of your time. No, just to give it a sort of a random sort of look, so they're not all exactly identical to each other, just like what we did before. Just pushing these all around, having a bit of fun. All right, select all of them, push Control G, and then for this group, I'm going to call these ones tiny drops. Okay, let's go back to layer number 1. All right, let's give it a new particle system, and I'm going to duplicate this current one, which is this one right here. I'm going to push the number 2, and I'm going to go down here to where the groups are, and I'm going to select tiny drops. There you go. Now you can see we haven't actually given it a material yet, so you can actually easily see where they are. So that's kind of cool. We want to change the seed amount. That's important, so that they are in a different place to where all the other particles are currently. And I'm going to select random and then uncheck even distribution so that they're just sort of randomly everywhere. I use jittered for the rest, so because I find jittered, you don't get droplets sort of overlapping each other as much. But for the smaller droplets, won't matter that much. And now for the size of it, I'm going to turn the size down to something a lot smaller. So something like that. Maybe even smaller than that. Let's go 0.08 perhaps. Is that small enough? Maybe smaller. 0.05, 0.005. Maybe that's too small. Maybe. Yes, maybe. All right, and then 50,000. Bam. Yeah, no, that's not too small. That's too big. Yeah, definitely. Let's get 0.003. And that's pretty good. Okay, and that's going to be even less noticeable when we actually give it the material that it needs to have. But before we continue, just so that Blender doesn't choke out on all these particles, let's set the rendering amount to 10% of that. And selecting our droplets here, and just select one of these droplets that we've created earlier. Control L, then materials, so that our newly created droplets now have the correct material. Back to layer 1, and we're now ready to do the final render. Go ahead, render it, and it crashes. How wonderful is that? I think I saved it. Did I save it? Let's check that. Is it using the right material? Yes, it is. Oh, cool. All right, I saved it. That's why you save it, ladies and gentlemen. Render it. Haha, it didn't crash this time. Okay, cool. Let's see how that looks when it's finished. And there we go. Now I can see actually the droplets are a little bit too big still, even though I've turned the size down to something really tiny. But let's go 0.0015, so half the size that they are currently, because I think they're still too big. Render it again. Is it going to crash or isn't it? No, it's going to be fine. All right, let's check it out. And there we go. So you can see it's now pretty much finished. We might do one final thing in the compositor. We're going to do a vignette. Oh, of course we're going to do a vignette, because I always do vignettes. It just wouldn't be right. I'm going to give it a lens distortion node. Somebody sent me an email recently, and they told me a correction on how I do this vignette. I have previously been using the math node, but apparently you don't need to. So I'm going to add, lens distortion node, which I just did then very quickly without showing you. Lens distortion. Set the distortion amount to 1, and then add a blur node. Connect this to there. Set it to fast Gaussian relative. And let's go 20%, 20%. And then connect a mix node. Then connect this to there, and then you can actually finally see it in place. So before, it kind of looks like it's not working because there's no preview there, but then when you connect it to something, then it works. Anyway, set this to multiply, and there we have it. I'm going to turn this down to be something less horrendous. So maybe 0.03, something like that. The vignette, by the way, of course, is just darkening the edges of the frame so that it's the focus is more on the center. And then I might also add in a filter node. And what this is going to do, if I set it to the correct one, sharpen, it's going to sharpen the image. Obviously, we don't want it to be the default horrendous value of 1. I'm going to set it to be 0.01. So it's going to just slightly sharpen it to be a little bit sharper than before, obviously. And you could do a little bit of color grading if you wanted to, but I think it looks pretty fine and dandy as it does currently. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did enjoy this tutorial, if you found it useful, please give me a like on the YouTube page. It's just a nice, easy way to give something back. If you wanted to do that, that would be great. And as always, if you make something cool with this tutorial, by all means, leave a link to it below if you're watching this on Blender Guru. And yeah, because I always like seeing the cool things you guys create from the tutorials. But that's it from me, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Have fun.